So I sent a few emails to a few startups in Nairobi at the time, and luckily one reaches back and they're like, "Yeah, we saw your application, and luckily we do have an opportunity to take you on board as an intern." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I joined them. So there was a small startup. I actually shouted out to them if they're watching this podcast.
Okay.
So the owner at the time was called Abraham. His company was Owen Tech, but they were a super small startup, but they had got a contract to work with a government agency to deliver some procurement process automation using I think what was it? I think it was Microsoft Access would allow you to create a database and then create an interface to interact with the database at the time. But anyway, at that point, they wanted new young engineers that knew PHP that I had just learned, or would teach them how to write PHP and then just migrate the whole application to PHP. So that's how I started. So I started in a startup. Then the startup, I did so well eventually, but at first...
You were on salary?
They used to give me some, I think, small amount of money for lunch and for transport, but not really like pay me, right?
Okay.
But they did well.
But you've gained a lot of experience.
Yeah, so I was paid with experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, true. That's actually happens. That's what you should do. You should volunteer yourself to gain experience, because you just pay that forward. You don't get paid right now, but it pays later, right? And that's, for any young person, that's one thing that they don't tell you enough. Once you complete school, it doesn't mean that you're ready to get paid the big bucks, right? It's a journey. So some do get lucky and they get the big bucks immediately, but for most of us, it takes a long time before you get to the level that you see maybe someone that you admire in tech earning, right?
Yeah. And when you shifted from PHP to, I know you also do Node.js, right?
Yeah, Node.js is a runtime for JavaScript. But Node.js, by the time I was starting, wasn't even
I know.
It wasn't even invented. And actually, JavaScript at the time only ran on the browser, and it was disabled. It wasn't something that people were using because it was so insecure. People had not, the web at the time wasn't ready for JavaScript. Right?
Yeah. I remember it felt like there's a scam. Like
because
they used to do this for advertising. So
many pop-ups. Yeah, that's why they disabled, because it was such a bad experience for the user to go to your website and receive like a million pop-ups just because JavaScript is enabled. So the browsers at the time, Explorer, I think Netscape, just disabled that thing, right? But I think, so what brought JavaScript to the front was the Google coming out with Chrome. So Chrome is what Chrome used the what is it called? The V6 engine, right?
Yeah, some next gen.
Yeah, for JavaScript. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that also is what gave birth to Node.js, because they use the same engine to have a runtime that would work on the backside as well. But yeah, before that, JavaScript was disabled. But then JavaScript, when it became popular because of Chrome and how the V6 engine had made everything much faster, much safer. Google does a lot of good jobs. It's credited for the explosion of JavaScript. But then a lot of people started moving away from PHP, because PHP, remember, was a backend implementation, right? You would only so it would only run on a server, right? And then you write your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for the front end. So you essentially just need to learn 2 languages, right? Or 3. So PHP and then something else. But when JavaScript became a backend, right, language in Node.js, you only needed to learn one language, JavaScript, right?
And once you know this, once you've learned back then PHP, JavaScript, something like HTML, or CSS, what salary you would expect to get back then? Was it paid like it is paid now?
Not at all. Not at
No?
all. No. So at the time,
I'm just curious, like the ranges.
so this is like the 2010s. So I'm speaking about 2010s. And this is the Kenyan context. I don't know about the global context. I didn't have the global.
Yeah, I'm curious to know like how did it change over time, right?
It has. It exploded. It has exploded over time, right? Because
for instance, to compare,
yeah. So I can't talk numbers, but percentages. So, for example, so when I got hired fully, so eventually what happened is after I interned with this startup, they actually absorbed me into a government agency eventually, just because I did so well. I was like a Swiss Army knife. I could do a lot of things, not just write code. I could provision servers, I could do networking, I could do a lot of things. And that's really important when you're in tech. You can, right now there are specialized roles, like you can be DevOps, you can be sysadmin, but before we used to do all of those things. You used to be a Swiss Army knife. You would code, you would fix printers, you'd fix network issues, you'd set up servers, you'd run a whole database. You'd be a DBA as well. Like databases was like everyone knew how to do it. But anyway, so when I got hired, comparatively with what someone is getting hired right now, they are getting, let me see, it's over like 300, 400% of what it was back then. That's a different time. There wasn't a lot of demand for the skills that they demand right now. So a lot of things are integrated with technology right now. Back in that time, only very, very few actual systems existed. And the biggest thing that I was working on at the time were ERPs, right? Enterprise Resource Planning, because that's
like SAP.
Exactly.
Sort of thing, yeah.
Adempia also. And the only persons that, or the only orgs that would be able to afford to do that were big
companies,
big company, government, and all of that. So startups were still doing very manual stuff. Actually, at the time, startups were running on Microsoft Office. So Excel was like an actual whole system. That's where like all accounts would run and all that. So a lot of the companies just ran on basic, what we'd consider right now, like basic application, like tools, like something that you do in a phone, right? But right now, a startup wants to have a website, they want to have an ERP, they want to have integration, they want to have a mobile application, they want to have a USD application. So you have to, pay someone to do all of that for you, right? So that means over that time, right? So there's a lot of demand for all of those skills, right? And the thing is, at least in Kenya, we still don't have enough experienced skilled laborers, right? Or skilled IT to do all of that, right? So that means then you're paid slightly higher now than you would before, because there's much, demand and supply.
The competition isn't that high at the moment, right?
Yeah.
So that's why some good talents, they are more rare to find.
And if you're very good talent, then you get paid relatively well, right? But also now, because human nature, so because that's the shining kind of career path. So a lot of, I know a few friends that started off as, I know one who started off as chemical engineer. Studied for 2 years in university, chemical engineer, say, I'm not going anywhere with this thing. Switch to IT. I know someone who was studying medicine, switched to IT. So we are getting, there's a good pipeline of many great engineers that are coming, but then that's gonna water down. So the supply and demand is gonna even out. So maybe the pay doesn't remain the same. It also, like, if there's a lot of supply of engineers, then why do I need to pay you X amount and not pay them Y amount?
I remember back then in Ukraine, I think in my first role, at my first employer, lots of guys were from police.
Oh,
they would. I remember they spent a year or a year and a half, read some books, did some YouTube content, around coding and stuff, and then got their first job, maybe for or a first project for some maybe few hundreds dollars, right? But once you just manage to finish one of the let's say commercial project, right? It's not, I mean, for yourself, but I mean a commercial, having for someone, your salary just boosts like a few X higher. So I would say with experience of 1 year in Ukraine or in Europe, such technologies as Node.js and you would be able to apply for 2,000 USDs or higher, and then once you have those 2, 3, 4 years, you can double it.
And the other thing that I actually forgot to mention is, so even in your context, Ukrainian, and also even in the Kenyan context. So when we are speaking about it, we are speaking about just the country itself. But technology is very global, right? And technology has opened up the world to become just a small village. So right now, right, even in Kenya, we have a lot of multinational tech companies that have come here, right? So that means they're looking for talent everywhere, right? So also that demand for techies basically goes up a notch, even within certain pockets of the world, like Kenya is it's known, right? Very good technology community, a lot of good talent, right? So that means your your top tech companies are coming here to look. They're coming to compete with the local companies for the same talent, right? So also that means that the local talent gets paid slightly higher than they would normally if it was just the local company that is hiring them, because also they are good enough to be hired by.
And I met lots of companies that try to isolate, people from basically going outside. They want to keep their prices lower. And so people doesn't really know their value, right? Their worth. So in the global level, like in the global perspective, that's very cool that technology actually like opens up, and you can access it from different countries. So people have opportunity to actually understand how much I would get paid if I would be in US, and why not, Some I understand there is like a culture issue. Could be because you may the work ethics and the environments and the processes could differ. But when it comes to a very tech role, eventually everything would be according to some general culture, right? Standard procedures and everything. So
and you know this very well. You are a project manager. Like agile. How we do like the agile process, Scrum, and all that. So a lot of these things are basically just